Deep beneath the freezing, windswept plains of Niflheim lies a realm where the sun never shines, and the only sound is the agonizing echo of weeping souls. This is Helheim, the Norse underworld, and ruling over this silent empire of the dead is a figure so terrifying that even the mighty gods of Asgard whispered her name with dread. Half her body is that of a beautiful, living woman. The other half is a rotting, decaying corpse. Her name is Hel, the goddess of death. But she wasn't always the ruler of the underworld. Once she was just a child, born of a monstrous union that threatened to tear the cosmos apart. And the story of how she was cast down from the heavens by Odin himself is one of the most chilling tales in all of mythology. But why did the Allfather fear a young girl so much that he banished her to the darkest depths of the universe? And how did this abandoned exile turn her prison into a kingdom, eventually holding the fate of the entire Norse pantheon in her cold, lifeless hands? To understand the rise of the goddess of death, we must first look at her bloodline. Hel was not born of the Aesir, the shining gods of Asgard. Her father was Loki, the infamous trickster god whose chaotic nature constantly kept the cosmos on the brink of disaster. Her mother was Angerboda, a giantess from the wild, frozen realm of Jotunheim, whose name literally translates to "she who brings sorrow." Together, Loki and Angerboda sired 3 children, monsters destined to bring about the end of the world. There was Fenrir, a wolf of colossal size and unspeakable ferocity. There was Jormungandr, a serpent so massive it would eventually encircle the entire earth. And then there was Hel. From the moment of her birth, Hel was different. She was not a beast, but her physical form was a grotesque contradiction. The right side of her face and body was flawless, possessing the pale, striking beauty of her giantess mother. But the left side was a horror show of blackened, decaying flesh, smelling of the grave and crawling with the chill of death. She was a living paradox, a walking bridge between life and mortality. For a time, the 3 siblings were raised in secret, hidden away in the dark forests of Jotunheim. But the gods of Asgard were not blind. Odin, the Allfather, sat upon his high throne of Hlidskjalf, from which he could see all things across the 9 realms. He watched the children of Loki grow, and his heart filled with an icy dread. The Norns, the weavers of destiny, had spoken. They prophesied that these 3 siblings would lead the forces of chaos during Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, and bring about the destruction of Asgard. Odin knew he had to act. He could not allow these monsters to reach their full strength. Sending a raiding party of gods to Jotunheim in the dead of night, Odin had the children bound and dragged to Asgard in chains. The gods stared in horror at the 3 young monsters. But while the giant wolf and the writhing serpent drew gasps of fear, it was the silent, half-dead girl who truly unsettled the Allfather. Odin looked down at Hel, seeing the cold, unblinking eye of her corpse half staring back at him. He knew he could not kill her, for the threads of fate had already woven her into the tapestry of the cosmos. But he could exile her. With a wave of his hand, Odin cast Jormungandr into the deep oceans of Midgard, and he chained the wolf Fenrir with magical bonds. For Hel, however, he reserved a different fate. He cast her down, deep into the cosmic abyss, past the roots of the world tree Yggdrasil. He threw her into Niflheim, the primordial realm of ice, fog, and eternal darkness. Odin believed he was burying his problem. He thought that by throwing Hel into the darkest corner of the universe, she would be forgotten, rendered powerless. But Odin made a critical mistake. He did not realize that by sending the half-dead girl to the realm of the dead, he was giving her exactly what she needed to build an empire. When Hel struck the frozen earth of Niflheim, she did not weep, nor did she beg for mercy. Instead, she looked around the desolate frozen wastes and saw opportunity. In the early days of the cosmos, the dead had no ruler. They wandered aimlessly through the freezing mists, shivering and forgotten. Hel gathered these lost souls to her side. She offered them a place of shelter, a realm of order in the chaotic afterlife. Seeing her strength, Odin made a pact with the young goddess, gave her authority over the 9 realms of the dead, decreeing that anyone who did not die a glorious death in battle would belong to hell. Those who died of old age, sickness, accident, or childbirth would bypass the golden halls of Valhalla and descend into her cold embrace. With a single decree, Hell became the ruler of the vast majority of the human dead. Hell set to work transforming her frozen exile into a structured, terrifying kingdom, which came to be known simply as Helheim. To enter her realm, a soul had to cross the Gjalla, a golden bridge spanning the echoing, rushing river of weapons and ice called Gjöll. The bridge was guarded by Modgud, a skeletal maiden who demanded a toll of blood or life force from every passing soul. Once past the bridge, the dead entered the gates of Helheim, guarded by Garm, a monstrous blood-stained hound whose howling could shake the foundations of the earth. At the heart of this dark empire sat Hell's palace, Eliudnir, which translates to the Hall of the Damp and Drizzling. Inside these gloomy walls, Hell ruled from her throne, called Sickbed. Her table was named Hunger, her knife was called Famine, her servants were Sloth and Delay, and her threshold was called Precipice. Every detail of her domain reflected the grim, inescapable reality of mortality. Yet, despite the terrifying names and the dismal atmosphere, Helheim was not a place of active torture like the Christian concept of hell. For most of its inhabitants, it was simply a gray, silent, and incredibly cold continuation of life. The dead tilled frozen fields, drank mead that tasted of dust, and sat by hearth fires that gave no warmth. But for the wicked, those who broke oaths, murdered, or seduced the spouses of others, Hell reserved a far worse fate. In the deepest, coldest depths of Helheim lay Nastrand, the shore of corpses. Here stood a massive, horrific hall woven entirely from the spines of venomous serpents, their heads facing inward, dripping rivers of burning poison. The wicked were forced to wade through these rivers of venom forever, while the great dragon Nidhogg chewed upon their rotting flesh and gnawed at the very roots of the world tree. In this dark corner, Hell's justice was absolute and unforgiving. As the centuries passed, Hell's power grew. While Odin feasted with his chosen warriors in Valhalla, preparing for a war he hoped to avert, Hell silently amassed an army of millions. Every plague, every cold winter, and every peaceful passing expanded her ranks. She sat upon her throne, watching and waiting, her living eye observing the gods of Asgard, her dead eye focused on the inevitable end. The gods in Asgard tried to ignore her, pretending that the half-dead girl they had thrown into the dirt was of no consequence. But the illusion of their superiority was shattered by a tragedy that shook the cosmos to its core. It was the death of Baldur, the god of light, beauty, and joy. Baldur was the most beloved of all the gods. He was pure, innocent, and his very presence brought light to the world. But Loki, Hel's father, orchestrated a cruel trick, guiding the blind god Hoder to throw a dart of mistletoe, the only substance on earth that could harm Baldur. The dart pierced Baldur's heart, and the god of light fell dead. Because Baldur did not die in battle, his soul did not go to Odin's Valhalla. Instead, his spirit descended into the cold, dark depths of Helheim. The grief in Asgard was absolute. The sun seemed to lose its warmth, and a shadow fell over the 9 realms. Odin, desperate to save his favorite son, sent his messenger, Hermod, on a dangerous mission. Riding Odin's 8-legged steed, Sleipnir, Hermod rode for 9 nights through dark, deep valleys until he crossed the golden bridge of Gjöll and entered the gates of Helheim. When Hermod entered the damp hall of Eliudnir, he found Baldur sitting in the place of honor, pale but treated with the respect due to a god. Sitting beside him on the high throne was Hel, her face split down the middle in her terrifying, contrasting visage. Hermod fell to his knees and begged the Queen of the Dead to let Baldur return to Asgard. He told her of the universal grief, of how every living thing wept for the lost god of light. Hel listened in silence, her dead eye cold and unmoving. She saw an opportunity to test the true depth of the god's love and to show them who truly held the ultimate power in the cosmos. Hel agreed to release Baldur, but she set a condition. She said that if indeed Baldur was so beloved, then every single thing in the cosmos, both living and dead, must weep for him. If even one creature refused to cry, Baldur would remain in Helheim forever. Hermod returned to Asgard with the news, and the gods immediately sent messengers to every corner of the universe. They asked the giants, the dwarves, the humans, the beasts, the trees, and even the cold stones to weep for Baldur. And they all did. The world was wet with the tears of creation, mourning the god of light. But as the messengers returned to Asgard, confident of their victory, they found a giantess sitting in a dark cave. Her name was Thok, but in reality, she was Loki in disguise. When asked to weep for Baldur, she sneered and replied that she would weep only dry tears for the god of light. She told them to let Hel keep what she had. Because of this single refusal, the contract was broken. Hel kept her word. Baldur remained in the dark halls of Helheim, a permanent resident of the underworld. Through this act, Hel proved to the Aesir that her power was absolute. Not even the magic of Odin or the tears of the entire cosmos could force her to yield. She had defeated the gods without swinging a sword. This victory solidified Hel's role as the keeper of the ultimate balance. She was not evil, but rather an indifferent force of nature. Death does not bargain, it does not show favoritism, and it does not make exceptions, even for the gods. But Hel's story does not end with her holding Baldur captive. Her true vengeance was yet to come. The prophecies of the Norns, the very warnings that had prompted Odin to banish Hel as a child, were destined to come true. The day of Ragnarok would arrive, and the chains of destiny would finally snap. When the great winter, Fimbulwinter, freezes the earth and the foundations of the cosmos begin to shatter, the chains binding Loki and the wolf Fenrir will break. The world serpent Jormungandr will rise from the ocean, spewing poison into the sky. And from the dark, frozen depths of Niflheim, a massive ship made from the unpaired fingernails of dead men, Naglfar, will set sail. At the helm of this terrifying fleet of the dead will be Loki, but the army he commands will belong to his daughter. Hel will unleash the millions of souls she has gathered over the eons. This army of the dead, gray-faced, cold, and silent, will march alongside the giants of Jotunheim and Muspelheim to wage war against the gods of Asgard. The hound Garm will break free from his chains at the gates of Helheim, howling a warning that signals the end of the world. Hel herself will not join the physical combat on the plains of Vigrid. She will remain the quiet commander, the architect of the end, watching as her family tears down the high walls of Asgard. In the end, almost all the gods, including Odin, Thor, and Loki, will perish. The old world will burn, and the sea will swallow the land. But from the ashes of this destruction, a new green world will rise from the waters. And who will return from the dark to inhabit this new world? Baldur, the god of light, having survived the destruction of the old world, safe inside the deep vaults of Helheim, will emerge to lead the new generation of gods. In a strange, poetic twist, Hel's stubborn refusal to release Baldur was the very thing that saved him from the fires of Ragnarok. By keeping him in the land of the dead, she preserved the light that would eventually rebuild the universe. Hel is more than just a monster or a goddess of decay. She is the guardian of transition, the keeper of the threshold, and the silent reminder that everything, even the gods themselves, must eventually bow to the passage of time. Odin threw her into the dirt, but she turned the dirt into a throne, proving that in the end, death always wins.
If you liked this video, please hit the like and subscribe button for more.